Hi, my name is Derek, and welcome to my channel, A Man in a Sea of Lies. Like I said before, quite a uh, dramatic name for a channel, but that's the way I feel these days. Like I'm swimming in a sea of lies. So, again, like in my previous video, I wanted to sort of set the stage of where I'm going with this. And mm, it's natural only that after talking about Pierre Elliott Trudeau, I would just keep on going with this and talk about our next Prime Minister, Brian Mulroney. He wasn't really next because John Turner, after Pierre Trudeau walked away, John Turner was briefly Prime Minister, but he lost next general election to Brian Mulroney. And it was quite a feat that Brian Mulroney accomplished. He won the biggest majority government ever in Canadian history. He was, of course, from Quebec. It's a big shocker. He was, of course, studied politics and law. That's another shocker for a Canadian politician. And he campaigned on economic reforms and constitutional reforms. He had a huge ego, like many politicians do, and just governing prudently it wasn't good enough for him. He wanted to, of course, leave a legacy, and whether he did or not, I'm not sure. One of his biggest accomplishments, he did well with the relations with the United States. He did really well, and Ronald Reagan liked him, and he managed to negotiate a very, very favorable trade agreement with us. The first the free trade agreement, and then NAFTA. We had the Auto Pact before, which worked well for southern Ontario and the car manufacturing and manufacturing in general. But NAFTA was much broader than that. So that was a great thing he accomplished. But it was costly as far as holding your line on the political debate back then. This was extremely controversial at times. People thought they were going to lose their sovereignty by implementing this free trade agreement with the United States. And people say that some people said it was going to bring prosperity to Canadians. Others people said that it fundamentally changed the Canadian economy towards North America. I disagree with that. We were always oriented towards North America, something that all of a sudden now that Donald Trump is in power, our politicians want to change that. I think it's misguided. So I think overall, despite the huge debate, the NAFTA was a good deal for Canada, and we prospered really after that. But Brian Mulroney, he was practically a definition of the term red Tory because of his fiscal policies. Deficits continued to grow after Pierre Elliott Trudeau, and by the time Brian Mulroney was done with his governing, we had $500 billion deficits we were running back then, which was an incredible amount for 1990s. And as far as his legacy, he was, of course, obsessed with, he wanted to leave legacy behind. So he was obsessed with getting Quebec on board with the Constitution. And he tried 1997 with Mitch Lake Accord, and he was there was a provision in the accord that would give Quebec status of distinct society. People were making fun of that back then. Distinct society. People would say distinct society. That was rude. But anyway, that accord failed to be ratified by all the provinces, and it failed. Didn't stop Brian Mulroney. He tried again in 1992 with the Charlottetown Accord, and he decided to go a little bit different route. We had a referendum on the Charlottetown Accord, and that also failed. So towards the end of Brian Mulroney's terms, it basically led to split Bloc Québécois, the alliance Brian Mulroney had with Lucien Bouchard. And because those two attempts of bringing Quebec on board constitutionally failed, the Quebec leading politicians formed the Bloc Québécois. And the other side, of the more conservative side of the Conservative Party, they formed a new wing, or then split from the Conservative Party, formed the Reform Party, led by Preston Manning, of course. As a result, after Mulroney finally gave up on his constitutional struggles, Kim Campbell was the next candidate for a Tory progressive leader. And on paper, she had many great ideas for conservative politicians, more ideas for smaller government, less taxation, and those sorts of things. But elections are funny, At some point, she said that a federal election is not the time to discuss serious issues. Canadians didn't like that at all, and the Federal Conservative Party was decimated. They were left with 2 seats in Parliament after Kim Campbell was done. So that's kind of ups and downs of Brian Mulroney. He accomplished some stuff, like with the free trade agreement, and then he failed miserably with the constitutional reforms, and he failed miserably as a prudent fiscal manager, with deficits and debt growing rapidly. And then, of course, came the Airbus affair, and it's the story on this Airbus affair is so convoluted. I mean, I remember that time, but I had to refresh my memory a little bit when I was preparing for this, and it was nuts. He took money from Schreiber. He took cash money in a suitcase in a hotel room. Maybe it speaks for Brian Mulroney a little bit that he got this sort of bribe in such a the arrangement was so amateurish that it looked like he's never done that. He'd never done that before. So I guess you could look at it like that. But what happened. And then the circus started. The RCMP got involved with an investigation, and the thing was that apparently he was, the federal government was bribed by Airbus in order for Air Canada to order new A320 Airbus aircraft, because they were competing heavily for an Air Canada order for new planes with Boeing. At the end of the day, they did order Airbus planes for Air Canada. And after the convoluted hearings, investigations, and all that, eventually Brian Mulroney resigned, but nothing really happened. There was commissions, there were hearings. He did lie under oath, or appeared to lie under oath. I don't want to be definitive here because there were never any charges laid. So these are all allegations, of course, but it looked bad, it looked dirty, and he did get money. And after all that, the argument, because Schreiber, who gave him the money, he was also investigated by German authorities for corruption, and it was never clear. I think Jean Chrétien, he was a really tough guy politically. Jean Chrétien, he was also a smart and educated man, but he was a lot tougher than Brian Mulroney, and I think he wanted really to punish Brian Mulroney for his, to punish the conservative and ruin the Conservative Party. He was really playing hardball with the Conservative Party. He did all kinds of things, Jean Chrétien, in order to win that election. And I'll get into that. There was macabre stuff that happened. So at the end of the day, if you want to count down what Mulroney accomplished and what his downfalls were, so I think that free trade with the U.S. was a positive thing. The improved relations with the United States was a positive thing. His fiscal policy was a dismal failure, and his obsession with constitutional reform and bringing Quebec into the fold also failed twice. And it was a tough time back then because economically we were struggling. And I couldn't believe it when I was like watching news on television and listening to the radio and reading articles. I read all the papers, all the dailies that were available here in Toronto. So it seemed to me that we're debating stuff that's totally unnecessary. Not up to debate. We had other much bigger problems, fiscal problems mainly. And all the political blabber was spent on this constitutional thing with Quebec. I couldn't understand that. I didn't know why. But the media and the political elites, the ruling elites, I saw it as a deflection. I think it was a deflection because they're doing a lousy job with everything else, so that they focus on this constitutional thing. Well, the Tories got punished for it. Chrétien won the election fairly easily, actually. And that was that. It opened up another chapter for Canadians. So thanks for watching. Take care.